Hello guys, welcome to DC What Ifs. So in this video, we will see what if Superman landed in Middle-earth Lord of the Rings. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Last Son of Krypton, First Son of the Stars. The stars burned differently here. Jor-El's calculations had been precise, but something went wrong when the wormhole collapsed. The tiny spacecraft carrying Krypton's last hope tumbled through dimensional barriers never meant to be crossed, its trajectory skewed by forces even Kryptonian science couldn't predict. Kal-El's pod streaked across Middle-earth's night sky in the 2851st year of the Third Age. Elves watching from Rivendell's balconies tracked its blazing descent with wide eyes, some reaching for bows out of instinct. The ground shook when it crashed into the forests beyond the valley, leaving a smoking trench half a mile long. What manner of dragon was that? Linder asked, clutching his harp as the echo of impact rolled through the valley. Elrond's face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed. No dragon. Something else entirely. He gestured to his guards. Bring me whatever fell from the stars. Approach with caution. The elven scouts found a gleaming metal object unlike any craft of dwarf or man. It had cracked open upon impact, and inside, a child. Human in appearance, perhaps a year old, wrapped in crimson fabric bearing a strange symbol. The child wasn't crying despite the crash. Instead, he watched the elves with curious blue eyes as they cautiously approached. When the head scout reached for him, the baby grabbed his finger with surprising strength. By the Vala, the scout whispered, he's strong as a troll. Elrond stood over the strange contraption in Rivendell's main courtyard, examining the alien text etched into its surface. No language of Middle-earth, he murmured. And the metal, it resembles mithril, yet different. He turned to the baby now cradled in a healer's arms. And you, little one? What shores did you sail from? The child cooed, reaching up with chubby hands toward the stars. His clothes bear this symbol, said Glorfindel, holding up the red blanket with its diamond-shaped emblem containing what looked like a serpentine S. A house sigil, perhaps. Elrond took the child in his arms. The baby immediately grabbed a lock of the elf lord's dark hair, tugging with strength that made even the ancient warrior wince. He is not of our world, Elrond said finally. The Vala have sent him to us for a purpose, though I know not what. He studied the child's face. We shall call him Kal-El, for he came from the stars, and to the stars his eyes are ever drawn. Kal-El grew quickly, and strangely. By his 5th year, he appeared as a child of 10, tall and robust. His black hair and blue eyes might have passed for those of Gondor's people, but his strength set him apart from the beginning. Careful, Kal-El. Eladan called as the boy leapt from stone to stone across the Bruinen River. A normal child would have been swept away by the current, but Kal-El bounded across with ease, each jump spanning distances impossible for even elven children. I'm fine, he shouted back, his voice carrying over the rushing water. Watch this. He picked up a boulder that would have taken 3 grown men to budge and tossed it across the river. It landed with a crash that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. Elrohir sighed. Father won't be pleased if you reshape the valley. Kal-El's unusual abilities became more pronounced with each passing season. By his 10th year, he could outrun the swiftest elven horses. By his 15th, he discovered he could see through solid objects, a talent that earned him temporary banishment from the women's quarters after an unfortunate misunderstanding. Elrond spent long hours with the growing boy, teaching him restraint alongside history and lore. Your gifts are mighty, Kal-El, but Middle-earth is delicate. Even the strongest sword can be wielded gently. One autumn evening during his 20th year, Kal-El sat with Elrond on a high balcony overlooking the valley. Below them, elves sang songs of Valinor beneath trees turned gold and crimson. I don't belong here, Kal-El said abruptly. Everyone knows it. Elrond's gaze remained on the stars. Few truly belong where fate places them. Aragorn was raised in these halls, a mortal among elves. My own brother chose mortality while I chose elvenkind. That's different. They're at least from this world. Kullel gestured toward the fragment of his ship, now kept as a relic in Elrond's study. Whatever I am, I'm not from Middle-earth. Perhaps that is precisely why you are needed here, Elrond replied. The old prophecies speak of help coming when darkness grows too great. Kullel snorted. I'm no prophecy. I'm just. He trailed off, unable to define what he was. You are Kullel, Elrond said simply. The rest you must discover yourself. When Kullel reached his 25th year, looking like a man of perhaps 20 summers, something new happened. He was running through the high mountain passes above Rivendell when his foot slipped on loose shale. Instead of tumbling down the mountainside, he hung suspended in the air. He was flying. The sensation overwhelmed him, weightlessness, freedom, power. He shot upward like an arrow, breaking through clouds, the air growing thin around him. Below, Middle-earth spread out like a living map, the misty mountains, the green expanse of Mirkwood, and far to the south, a darkness that could only be Mordor. He flew for hours, testing his limits, before returning to Rivendell where a concerned Elrond awaited. I can fly, Kullel announced, dropping from the sky into the courtyard. So I see, Elrond replied dryly. The eagles of Manwë may take offense at the competition. That night, the dreams came, fragments of another life, a red sun, voices speaking in a language that felt familiar yet foreign. A man and woman placing him in the pod, tears streaming down their faces. Destruction following. An entire world dying. He woke gasping, his eyes burning strangely. When he blinked, twin beams of intense heat shot from his eyes, setting his bed curtains aflame. He shouted in alarm, beating out the fire with his hands, unharmed by the flames. Elrond found him sitting amidst the charred remnants. Another gift reveals itself, the elf lord observed. Gift? I nearly burned down Rivendell. Kullel ran his hands through his hair in frustration. What am I becoming? Not becoming. Remembering. Elrond sat beside him. Your body recalls what your mind cannot, the nature of your original world. Over the following months, Kullel learned to control these new abilities. His vision could focus with microscopic precision or see leagues into the distance. The heat from his eyes could be focused to melt metal or widen to warm a room. His flight became as natural as walking. Yet for all his growing power, a loneliness haunted him. The elves treated him with respect and care, but always with the knowledge that he walked a different path. Among the rare human visitors to Rivendell, he felt even more alien, concealing his abilities lest he be thought a sorcerer or demon. In his 30th year, Kullel took to spending time in the wilds, testing his powers away from curious eyes. He flew above the Etten-Moors, watching stone trolls from high altitudes. He swam the depths of Lake Evendim, discovering he needed no air for remarkable periods. He lifted massive boulders and tossed them like pebbles, delighting in the freedom to use his full strength. It was during one such expedition that he encountered his first real battle. A band of orcs had ambushed a group of rangers near the Weather Hills. Kullel heard the clash of swords from miles away, his enhanced hearing picking up the sounds of combat and cries of pain. He arrived to find a dozen rangers surrounded by nearly 40 orcs. Without hesitation, he dropped from the sky into their midst. His arrival scattered orcs like ninepins, their crude weapons breaking against his skin. What in Era's name, gasped a ranger as Kullel lifted an orc overhead and hurled it into 3 of its companions. The battle lasted less than a minute. Orcs fled screaming about sky demons as Kullel tore through their ranks with casual ease. When the last orc disappeared into the wilderness, Kullel turned to find the rangers staring at him, swords still drawn. Their leader stepped forward cautiously. A weathered man with keen gray eyes, he looked vaguely familiar. I mean no harm, Kullel said, raising his hands. I heard the fighting. From where? The ranger asked. There are no settlements nearby. Kullel hesitated. I was, traveling. Flying, you mean? The ranger sheathed his sword. You're Elrond's foundling. The Star Child. Now Kullel recognized him, Aragorn, foster son of Elrond, who occasionally returned to Rivendell between his long journeys. They had crossed paths only a few times over the years. My name is Kullel, he said, extending his hand in the manner of men. Aragorn clasped it firmly. I know who you are. Tales of the strong young man raised by elves reach even the wild places. His eyes narrowed. Though none mentioned you could fly. It's a recent development, Kullel replied with a half-smile. Later, by campfire, Aragorn shared news from the wider world, growing shadows in the east, increased orc activity, strange rumors from the south. For the first time, Kullel felt the pull of events beyond Rivendell's protected valley. The darkness grows, Aragorn said quietly. War is coming, though few yet realize it. Kullel stared into the flames. Perhaps this is why I'm here. With my abilities, power alone does not win wars, Aragorn interrupted. Sauron has power enough. It's the hearts of free people that will determine the outcome. Still, Kullel insisted, I could help. Aragorn studied him thoughtfully. Perhaps. But timing matters in these affairs. Elrond counsels patience for good reason. He poked the fire, sending sparks skyward. When the time comes, I suspect you'll know your part. 3 years later, the time came. Kullel was flying high above the misty mountains when he spotted 9 black riders emerging from Moria's eastern gate. Even from thousands of feet up, he felt a cold dread emanating from them. These were no ordinary riders, they reeked of ancient evil. He tracked them from the air as they rode eastward, then north, eventually crossing the Gladden fields toward the Anduin. Something about their purposeful movement and the aura of malice surrounding them convinced him this was important enough to report to Elrond. When he returned to Rivendell, he found the valley in unusual activity. Elves prepared guest quarters, stocked provisions, and sharpened weapons rarely used outside of practice grounds. What's happening? He asked Lindar. Mithrandir has arrived with news, the elf replied. Lord Elrond has summoned representatives from all free peoples. A council is to be held. Elrond confirmed the gravity of the situation when Kullel found him in his study. The One Ring has been found, he said without preamble. Kullel knew the stories, the Dark Lord's Ring of Power, lost for thousands of years. Where? The Shire. With a hobbit, of all creatures. Elrond's face was grim. Frodo Baggins carries it here even now, pursued by the 9 Nazgul you saw. Aragorn protects him, but the journey is perilous. I could fly to them, bring them here safely, Elrond raised a hand. No. The ring must come to Rivendell by its appointed path. Too much interference may alert the enemy to its importance. Over the next days, representatives began arriving, elves from Mirkwood and Lothlorien, dwarves from the Lonely Mountain, men from Gondor. And finally, exhausted and wounded, Frodo Baggins arrived with Aragorn and 3 companion hobbits. Kullel watched from a distance as the halfling was rushed to the healing quarters, a wound in his shoulder emanating darkness that made Kullel physically uncomfortable to approach. Something about the injury, or perhaps about Frodo himself, created a sensation Kullel had never experienced before, weakness. The Council of Elrond convened on a clear autumn morning. Kullel took his place among the gathered representatives, feeling the curious stares of those who had heard rumors of the strong young man who flew above Rivendell. Elrond spoke of the ring's history, of Isildur's fateful decision, of Gollum and Bilbo and finally Frodo. The hobbit placed the simple gold band on a stone pedestal at the center of the council circle. The moment the ring was revealed, Kullel felt it, a strange pressure behind his eyes, a whisper just below hearing. Unlike the others present, he heard the ring's voice with perfect clarity, as if it spoke directly to his enhanced senses. You do not belong here, it seemed to say. I can give you what you seek. I can rebuild your world. Images flashed through Kullel's mind, crystalline spires rising from Middle-earth's plains, a red sun engineered to replace the familiar yellow one, people with his strength and abilities flourishing where once there had been only one. Krypton, he whispered, the word coming unbidden to his lips. Nearby, Gandalf's head snapped toward him, the wizard's bushy eyebrows drawing together in concern. The debate around the ring's fate grew heated. The man from Gondor, Boromir, argued for using it as a weapon. Gandalf opposed him. The dwarf Gimli tried to destroy it with his axe, only for his weapon to shatter while the ring remained unmarked. The ring must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom, Elrond declared. Then what are we waiting for? Cullel spoke up, rising from his seat. All eyes turned to him. I could fly it there in a day. Murmurs broke out among the council. Gandalf exchanged a significant look with Elrond. It's not so simple, the wizard said. The ring cannot be handled lightly. Even with your unique abilities, Cullel, the ring would work on your mind during the journey. And Sauron's I would be drawn to such a direct approach. Surely no power in Middle-earth could stand against him, the elf Legolas interjected, gesturing toward Cullel. We've all heard the tales of your strength. Tales indeed, Boromir scoffed. Are we to entrust the fate of all peoples to legends and rumors? Who exactly are you, Cullel of Nowhere? Before Cullel could answer, argument erupted between the various factions. Dwarf shouted at elf, man contested with wizard, until Frodo's small voice cut through the chaos. I will take the ring to Mordor, the hobbit declared. Though I do not know the way. The council fell silent. One by one, companions pledged themselves to Frodo's quest, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, and finally Frodo's 3 hobbit friends who refused to be left behind. Cullel stepped forward last. My powers are yours to command, Frodo Baggins. I'll help you reach Mount Doom. And thus the fellowship was formed, 9 companions to match the 9 Nazgul, with Cullel making an unprecedented 10th member. Later, Gandalf sought Cullel out. The wizard found him on a high balcony, staring eastward toward their eventual destination. You heard the ring speak, Gandalf said without preamble. What did it offer you? Cullel hesitated. Home. My original home. Ah. The wizard leaned on his staff. The ring offers what we desire most, whether or not it can truly provide it. Krypton, Cullel said, testing the word that had come to him during the council. I think that was my world's name. Gandalf's eyes narrowed. The ring may have pulled that knowledge from deep within you. Be wary, Cullel. Your strength makes you a powerful ally, but it may also make you a more dangerous enemy should you fall. I won't fall, Cullel promised. Gandalf's smile didn't reach his eyes. Everyone believes that at the beginning. The Fellowship departed Rivendell in December, heading south along the eastern flanks of the Misty Mountains. Cullel quickly proved his value as both scout and protector, flying ahead to survey their path and returning with reports of safe passage or dangers to avoid. He did his best to fit in with his companions, though his abilities created natural distance. The hobbits regarded him with wide-eyed wonder, especially after he demonstrated his strength by casually lifting a fallen tree trunk that blocked their path. Gimli remained skeptical, challenging him to feats of strength that Cullel performed with ease. Legolas seemed fascinated, questioning him about flying and what the world looked like from above. Boromir alone maintained a wary distance, watching Cullel with undisguised suspicion. If you're so powerful, he asked one evening as they made camp, why hide in Rivendell all these years? Gondor has fought Mordor's forces for generations. One man with your abilities could have turned the tide long ago. Elrond counseled patience, Cullel replied. He believed I was sent here for a specific purpose, at a specific time. Convenient, Boromir muttered. Aragorn intervened before tensions could rise. Each of us has followed our own path to this fellowship. Let's focus on the road ahead rather than the roads behind. Their journey south continued, with Gandalf leading them toward the Gap of Rohan. After a fortnight of travel, however, their plans changed. Creebane from Dunland, spies of Saruman, forced them to hide and reconsider their route. "We must take the pass of Caradhras," Gandalf declared, pointing to the towering snow-capped peak looming above them. The mountain proved treacherous. Blizzards slowed their progress, and snow piled higher than the hobbits were tall. Cullel used his heat vision to melt paths through the deepest drifts, but Caradhras fought back with renewed fury, as if the mountain itself opposed them. When an avalanche nearly buried them, Cullel flew upward, searching for the source. High above, he spotted a dark figure on a distant peak, arms raised toward the storm clouds. "Saruman," he shouted against the wind. "He's controlling the storm." He considered flying to confront the wizard directly, but Gandalf's earlier warnings about revealing their full strength too soon stayed his hand. Instead, he returned to the Fellowship, helping to dig them out from the snow. "The passage south is being watched," Gandalf said grimly as they huddled in the lee of a cliff. "We must go under the mountain. Through the mines of Moria." Fear flickered across Aragorn's face. "Gandalf, that is not a road easily taken." "Nevertheless," the wizard replied, "it is the road we must attempt." The entrance to Moria lay before them, a smooth cliff face beside a dark, still lake. Gandalf stood before the stone, muttering incantations as moonlight revealed the hidden door. Cullel stared uneasily at the water. Something about it dampened his senses, like a fog settling over his enhanced perception. He couldn't see beneath its surface despite his X-ray vision, a rare limitation of his abilities. "I don't like this place," he said quietly to Aragorn. "Something feels wrong." "Moria has been silent for many years," the ranger replied. "Balin led a colony of dwarves to reclaim it, but no word has come for too long." When Gandalf finally opened the doors with the Elvish word for friend, the Fellowship entered cautiously. The beam of light from Gandalf's staff revealed their first horror: dwarf skeletons scattered across the entrance hall, pierced with crude arrows and axes. "This is no mine," Boromir said grimly. "It's a tomb." Before they could retreat, tentacles exploded from the dark lake behind them, seizing Frodo. The Watcher in the water had been disturbed. Cullel reacted instantly, flying toward the monster as Aragorn and Boromir slashed at its writhing limbs. He grabbed the tentacle holding Frodo and squeezed until the creature roared in pain, releasing the hobbit. Catching Frodo in mid-air, Cullel deposited him safely with the others before turning back to the beast. His eyes glowed red, and twin beams of intense heat sliced through multiple tentacles. The monster thrashed in agony, retreating briefly before surging forward with renewed fury. As the Fellowship fled into Moria, the creature seized the doors, pulling down tons of rock and blocking their exit. "We now have but one choice," Gandalf said, illuminating the tip of his staff. "We must face the long dark of Moria." Their journey through the ancient dwarf kingdom proved slow and treacherous. Cullel offered to fly ahead and scout their path, but Gandalf refused. "There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world," the wizard warned. "We must stay together." On their third day beneath the mountain, Cullel began to feel strange. A persistent weakness crept through his limbs, reminiscent of what he'd felt near Frodo's Morgul wound but more pervasive. His vision occasionally blurred, and the effortless strength he'd always taken for granted now required conscious effort. "You look unwell," Legolas observed as they rested in a massive hall of pillars. "Something about this place affects me," Cullel admitted. "The deeper we go, the weaker I feel." Gandalf overheard their conversation. "The dwarves delved too greedily and too deep," he said. "They awaken things in the darkness, ancient magics and beings from the elder days. Perhaps they resonate poorly with your nature, Cullel." "I'll be fine," Cullel insisted, though he wasn't certain. They continued through magnificent halls and across narrow bridges spanning bottomless chasms. Despite his weakened state, Cullel remained vigilant, his hearing still sharp enough to detect distant drums beating in the deep. When they reached the chamber of Mazarbul, disaster struck. Inside, they found Balin's tomb and records of the colony's final days. While Gandalf read from the dust-covered book, Pippin accidentally knocked a skeleton down a well, sending echoes throughout the mines. Drums answered. Then horns. Then the screeching of approaching orcs. "They're coming," Legolas warned. The Fellowship barricaded the doors, but it was a futile effort. Soon orcs broke through, led by a massive cave troll. The chamber erupted into chaos as the companions fought for their lives. Weakened though he was, Kal-El still possessed strength beyond normal men. He tore through the orc ranks, hurling attackers against walls and crushing their crude weapons with his bare hands. When the troll focused its attention on Frodo, Kal-El intercepted its spear thrust, the weapon shattering against his chest. Enraged, the troll swung its chain at Kal-El, catching him across the face. To everyone's shock, Kal-El's most of all, the blow drew blood from his lip. "Impossible," he gasped, touching the cut in disbelief. The troll roared in triumph and charged. Kal-El met its rush head-on, grappling with the beast in a contest of raw strength. Normally, he would have overpowered it easily, but here in the depths of Moria, his strength had diminished enough to make the battle even. "Kal-El!" Legolas shouted, firing arrows into the troll's back. "Move aside!" Summoning his remaining strength, Kal-El heaved the troll backward, creating space for Legolas to land a perfect shot through the roof of its mouth and into its brain. The beast crashed to the floor, dead. In the momentary quiet that followed, Kal-El wiped blood from his face, staring at it with confusion and the first stirrings of fear. He was not invulnerable here. They fled the chamber, pursued by hundreds of orcs swarming from every direction. The creatures surrounded them in the vast hall of pillars, a sea of enemies closing in from all sides. Then, a deep rumble shook the hall. The orcs froze, then scattered in terror. "What new devilry is this?" Boromir asked. A fiery glow approached from the far end of the hall. Gandalf's face fell into lines of dread. "A Balrog," he whispered. "A demon of the ancient world. This foe is beyond any of you. Run!" They fled toward the bridge of Khazad-dûm, the Balrog's fiery presence growing behind them. As they ran, Kal-El felt the creature's heat like a physical blow. Something about its nature, its origin in the earliest days of Middle-earth, seemed uniquely harmful to him. When they reached the narrow bridge spanning a bottomless abyss, Gandalf stopped at the center, turning to face the demon alone. "You cannot pass," the wizard commanded. The Balrog rose to its full height, spreading wings of shadow and flame. It towered over Gandalf, a creature of primordial darkness against one old man with a staff and sword. Kal-El couldn't let Gandalf face it alone. Despite his weakened state, he launched himself into the air, flying toward the confrontation. "No!" Gandalf shouted. "Kal-El, stay back." The Balrog turned its attention to the flying man, sensing something different, something alien. It roared, lashing out with its flaming whip. The weapon caught Kal-El across the chest, burning through his clothing and searing his skin with pain he'd never known before. He cried out, tumbling through the air as the Balrog's ancient magic disrupted his ability to fly. He crashed onto the bridge behind Gandalf, his chest burned and bleeding. Gandalf raised his staff high. "You shall not pass." He brought the staff down with a crack that shattered the bridge beneath the Balrog's feet. The demon plunged into the abyss, but as it fell, its whip lashed upward one final time, catching Gandalf's ankle and pulling him over the edge. "Fly, you fools," the wizard gasped, and then he was gone. Kal-El lunged for him, faster than the others could see, but his strength failed at the crucial moment. His fingers closed on empty air as Gandalf disappeared into darkness. Arrows whistled around them as orcs regrouped on the far side. Aragorn led the stunned fellowship toward the eastern exit, practically dragging Kal-El, who stared in shock at the broken bridge. "I could have saved him," Kal-El said numbly as they emerged into daylight. "If we hadn't been so deep under the mountain, if my powers hadn't weakened." "You're bleeding," Aragorn noted with surprise, examining the whip burn across Kal-El's chest. "I thought weapons couldn't harm you." "They can't. Not normally. Kal-El looked back at the dark entrance to Moria. But that creature wasn't normal. It was ancient magic, from the beginning of this world. We cannot stay here, Aragorn said grimly. By nightfall these hills will be swarming with orcs. The Fellowship pressed on toward Lothlorien, Kal-El flying above as rear guard despite his injuries. The further they got from Moria, the more his strength returned, his wounds healing with remarkable speed once they reached the sunlight. Yet something had fundamentally changed. For the first time since arriving in Middle-earth, Kal-El had confronted a power that could genuinely harm him. The certainty of his invulnerability had been shattered as surely as Gimli's axe against the One Ring. And as they entered the golden woods of Lothlorien, a troubling thought surfaced in his mind: if ancient magic from the early days of Arda could harm him so easily, what might the concentrated evil of Sauron himself do? The Fellowship had lost Gandalf. The way forward seemed darker than ever. And Kal-El, the invincible Star Child, had discovered his first true weakness in Middle-earth. Chapter 2, Under Strange Stars. The golden leaves of Lothlorien brought healing, for most of the Fellowship. While the others found rest among the ancient melon trees, Kal-El's dreams grew more intense. Each night, fragments of his forgotten world surfaced like wreckage after a storm. You've barely slept, Aragorn noted, finding Kal-El perched on a high flet overlooking the silver waters of the Celebrant. I don't need much sleep, Kal-El replied, his eyes fixed on the stars. Never have. That's not what troubles you. Kal-El sighed. Since Moria, I keep seeing my world. My real parents. A red sun. Crystal cities. They're putting me in that pod, saying goodbye. He ran a hand through his dark hair. And then everything burns. Aragorn sat beside him. The Lady Galadriel might help you understand these visions. She sees much that remains hidden to others. That's what I'm afraid of, Kal-El admitted. The Lady of the Golden Wood summoned Kal-El the following day. He found her alone beside her mirror, a silver basin filled with water that reflected more than just light. Son of the stars, Galadriel greeted him, her ancient eyes studying his face. You carry memories your mind cannot recall, yet your blood remembers. Can you help me understand them? He asked. Perhaps. But knowledge brings pain as often as comfort. She gestured to the mirror. If you wish to see, look into the water. Kal-El approached cautiously. The surface of the mirror appeared ordinary enough, yet something about it made his skin prickle with apprehension. What will I see? Even the wise cannot tell. The mirror shows many things, things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass. She fixed him with her penetrating gaze. Are you certain you wish to look? He nodded and leaned forward. At first, he saw only his reflection. Then the water rippled, and images bloomed beneath the surface. A world with towering crystalline structures. A red sun hanging heavy in an alien sky. Two people, a man and woman in strange garments, placing an infant into a small craft. Jor-El, he whispered, the name coming unbidden to his lips. And Lara. The scene shifted. The same planet now quaking, its surface cracking. People running in panic as buildings collapsed. The red sun expanding, unstable. A civilization in its final moments. Kal-El gripped the edges of the basin, unable to look away as Krypton died before his eyes. The mirror darkened, then showed new images, himself in Middle-earth, flying above armies. Fighting alongside men against orcs. Facing the eye of Sauron directly. And finally, holding the One Ring, its gold surface reflecting not Middle-earth but a reborn Krypton rising from the ashes. He jerked back from the basin, breathing hard. You saw your origins, Galadriel said softly. And possible futures. My world, Krypton, it's gone. Destroyed. The reality of it settled into his bones. I'm the last. The only survivor. Perhaps that is why you were sent here, she suggested. One last son to find a new home. Middle-earth has accepted many wanderers from distant shores. The mirror showed me taking the ring, he said, troubled by the vision. Galadriel's face grew grave. The ring calls differently to each of us. To you, it offers what none in Middle-earth could otherwise provide, a connection to your lost world. Her voice lowered. A temptation uniquely crafted for the last son of Krypton. Kal-El's fists clenched. I won't betray the Fellowship. We all believe ourselves strong enough to resist. Galadriel's smile held no mirth. Until the moment we are not. The Fellowship departed Lothlorien with gifts from the elves, elven cloaks, lembas bread, and special tokens for each member. For Kal-El, Galadriel provided a crystal pendant that glowed with inner light. This contains the light of Erendil, our most beloved star, she told him. It may remind you that even those born under different stars can find their path here. Their journey continued down the great river. Kal-El often flew ahead, scouting for dangers, but returned frequently to check on his companions, particularly Frodo, whose burden grew heavier each day. The hobbit's eyes followed Kal-El with a mixture of hope and suspicion that troubled the Kryptonian. Once, when they made camp, Frodo approached him privately. You could take it, couldn't you? Frodo asked abruptly. The ring. You're strong enough to carry it to Mordor. Kal-El chose his words carefully. I could carry it physically, yes. But the ring works on the mind, Frodo. And I'm not immune to that. But you're not of this world. Perhaps it would affect you differently. Or perhaps worse. Kal-El placed a hand on the hobbit's shoulder. The ring has already shown me visions of Krypton reborn. If I carried it much longer, I might convince myself those visions could become reality. Frodo's hand crept to his chest, where the ring hung on its chain. I see it too, sometimes. Visions. The Shire turned into a garden paradise, with me as its benevolent ruler. He laughed bitterly. As if a hobbit would want to rule anything larger than his pantry. We all have our weaknesses, Frodo. Even me. Kal-El glanced toward the east, where dark clouds gathered. Especially me. Near the falls of Rhoros, everything changed. The Fellowship made camp on the western shore, tension growing as they approached the critical decision, whether to turn east directly toward Mordor or west to Minas Tirith first. Kal-El heard the attack coming before anyone else, the heavy footfalls of Uruk-hai moving through the forests on the eastern shore. Hundreds of them. We're being hunted, he warned Aragorn. Saruman's forces are closing in. Before they could form a plan, they realized Frodo had wandered off alone. And so had Boromir. Find them, Aragorn commanded. Quickly. Kal-El took to the air, scanning the forest with his enhanced vision. He located Frodo first, hiding behind a tree as Boromir gathered firewood nearby, talking to himself. The man from Gondor's face showed internal struggle, his movements growing increasingly agitated. Then Boromir spotted Frodo and approached him, at first pleading for the ring and then growing angry when Frodo refused. Kal-El dove toward them as Boromir lunged at the hobbit, but Frodo slipped on the ring and vanished before either could reach him. Frodo! Boromir cried, falling to his knees in shame. What have I done? Kal-El landed beside him. Where did he go? He's invisible, the ring. I tried to take it. Boromir covered his face. I've failed everyone. Kal-El's enhanced hearing picked up Frodo's footsteps fleeing down the hill, but before he could follow, battle horns sounded from the east. The Uruk-hai had arrived. The forest erupted into chaos. Kal-El flew toward the loudest fighting, finding Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas battling dozens of Uruks near the ruins of Amon Hen. He dropped from the sky, crushing 2 Uruks beneath him as he landed. The hobbits! Aragorn shouted between sword strokes. Find them! Kal-El spun in a circle, his vision penetrating the trees. He spotted Merry and Pippin fleeing toward the west, pursued by Uruks. In another direction, he glimpsed Frodo running toward the river, Sam following at a distance. "Frodo's heading for the boats," he reported. "Merry and Pippin are in danger to the west. And more Uruks are coming from the east." A horn blew, 3 loud blasts. Boromir, Aragorn recognized. He's in trouble. Cullel made a split-second decision. "I'll help Boromir and the hobbits. You 3 cut a path to Frodo." Without waiting for agreement, he launched into the air, flying toward Boromir's horn call. He found the Gondorian fighting valiantly, surrounded by Uruk-hai as he defended Merry and Pippin. Already, 3 black-feathered arrows protruded from Boromir's chest, yet he continued swinging his sword. Cullel didn't hesitate. His eyes flashed red, and heat beams cut through the Uruks closest to Boromir. He landed between the wounded man and an approaching group of enemies, becoming a living shield. "Get behind me," he ordered, grabbing an Uruk sword and crushing it in his fist. The battle became a blur of action, Cullel moving faster than the eye could follow, dispatching Uruks with devastating efficiency. But for every enemy he felled, 3 more appeared. And Boromir was fading fast. A massive Uruk with white handprints painted on his face emerged from the trees, notching another arrow to his bow. Cullel recognized the threat and moved to intercept, but more Uruks grabbed at him, slowing him just enough that the arrow flew past him toward Boromir. With his last strength, Cullel lunged backward, catching the arrow before it could strike. But while his attention was diverted, other Uruks seized Merry and Pippin, throwing them over their shoulders. "No!" Cullel shouted, breaking free and rushing the Uruk leader. The massive creature met his charge without fear, swinging a crude blade that shattered against Cullel's chest. Cullel lifted the Uruk by the throat, ready to end him, when cries from the captured hobbits pulled his attention away. The leader used that momentary distraction to signal retreat. The Uruk-hai fled into the forest, carrying Merry and Pippin with them. Cullel turned back to Boromir, who lay gasping on the forest floor, blood staining his tunic around 3 arrow shafts. "The little ones," Boromir choked out. "Did they take them?" "Yes," Cullel admitted, kneeling beside him. "But we'll get them back." Boromir grasped his arm with surprising strength. "Listen to me. The ring tempted me. It will tempt you too, perhaps more than any of us. It knows your loss. It will offer you everything you've ever wanted." "I know," Cullel said quietly. "You must resist." Blood bubbled at the corner of Boromir's mouth. "For all your strength, that will be your greatest battle." Aragorn burst through the trees, taking in the scene with a soldier's experienced eye. He knelt beside Boromir as the Gondorians' breathing grew more labored. "They took the little ones," Boromir gasped. "Be still," Aragorn urged. "Frodo. Where is Frodo?" "I let Frodo go," Aragorn said softly. Boromir's eyes widened. "Then you did what I could not. I tried to take the ring from him. The ring is beyond our reach now. Forgive me. I did not see it. I have failed you all." "No, Boromir," Aragorn said firmly. "You fought bravely. You kept your honor." Cullel stood silently, watching as Boromir and Aragorn shared final words. When Boromir's breath stilled at last, Cullel helped carry his body to one of the elven boats. They placed him within it with his sword, shield, and the horn of Gondor, now cloven in 2. The current carried him over the falls of Rhoros, a warrior's funeral in a land far from home. Legolas pushed another boat into the water. "Hurry! Frodo and Sam have reached the eastern shore." Across the river, they could see the 2 small figures disappearing into the trees. "You mean not to follow them," Legolas realized, seeing Aragorn's face. "Frodo's fate is no longer in our hands," Aragorn replied. "Then it has all been in vain," Gimli growled. "The fellowship has failed." "Not while we remain true to each other," Aragorn countered. "We will not abandon Merry and Pippin to torment and death." He strapped on his dagger. "Leave all that can be spared behind. We travel light. Let us hunt some orc. Kullel nodded grimly. I can fly ahead, track their path. No, Aragorn decided. We stay together. The Uruk-hai move swiftly, but they leave clear tracks. And they're heading west, toward Isengard. Toward Saruman, Kullel realized. Aragorn's eyes hardened. Exactly. For 3 days, they pursued the Uruk-hai across the plains of Rohan. Kullel could have flown ahead and intercepted the orcs easily, but Aragorn insisted they remain together, wary of Saruman's growing power and unknown plans. We know little of the wizard's capabilities, Aragorn explained as they jogged across the rolling grasslands. If he has sent one army, he may have others. Better we face whatever comes as a united force. On the 3rd day, they encountered riders of Rohan, a full Eard led by Eomer, nephew of King Theoden. The horsemen surrounded them, spears leveled, until Aragorn revealed his identity and lineage. We track a party of Uruk-hai westward across the plain, he told Eomer. They've taken 2 of our friends captive. The Uruks are destroyed, Eomer replied grimly. We slaughtered them during the night. And the hobbits? Gimli demanded. Did you see 2 hobbits with them? They would be small, like children to your eyes, Aragorn added. Eomer shook his head. We left none alive. We piled the carcasses and burned them. He pointed toward a smoking mound in the distance. The news struck them like a physical blow. Still, they rode to the smoldering pile of orc corpses, searching desperately for any sign of the hobbits. Kullel used his vision to scan through the ashes, relief washing over him when he found no small bodies among the carnage. Their tracks lead away from the battle, he announced, examining the ground near the edge of Fangorn Forest. Into the trees. Fangorn. Gimli shuddered. What madness drove them in there? They followed the tracks into the ancient forest, where massive trees crowded together, their gnarled roots creating a labyrinth on the forest floor. Even Kullel felt small beneath their towering presence. This forest is alive, Legolas whispered. With memory, and anger. They tracked the hobbits to a small clearing where the trail abruptly vanished. As they searched for further signs, a blinding white figure appeared among the trees. Legolas fired an arrow that the figure deflected effortlessly. Kullel prepared to launch himself at the potential threat when the light dimmed, revealing a familiar face. Gandalf? Aragorn breathed in disbelief. The wizard stood before them transformed, no longer Gandalf the Grey but Gandalf the White, more powerful than before. He explained his fall through fire and darkness, his battle with the Balrog, and his return with greater purpose. One stage of your journey is over. Another begins, Gandalf told them. War has come to Rohan. We must ride to Edoras with all speed. What about Merry and Pippin? Kullel asked. They are quite safe, Gandalf assured them. In the care of the Ents, the shepherds of the forest. And there they will remain until our task is done. Edoras stood upon a high hill, its golden hall gleaming in the sunlight. As they approached, Kullel noticed the absence of activity typical to a living city. No children played in the streets, no merchants called their wares. The people watched their arrival with suspicious eyes, hands never far from weapon hilts. You'd find more cheer in a graveyard, Gimli muttered. At Meduseld, the golden hall of Theoden, they were forced to surrender their weapons before entering. The guard, Hama, eyed Kullel with particular suspicion. He carries no weapon, Aragorn explained. All must disarm, Hama insisted. Gandalf intervened. His strength lies in himself, not in steel. Would you ask a man to leave his arms at the door? Reluctantly, Hama allowed Kullel to pass. Inside, they found King Theoden aged beyond his years, skin hanging loose on his bones, eyes clouded. Beside him sat a pale man with greasy dark hair, Grima Wormtongue, the king's advisor and Saruman's spy. Gandalf worked to free Theoden from Saruman's influence, revealing his white robes and directing the light of his staff into the king's eyes. Grima tried to interfere, but Kullel pinned him to a pillar with one hand, lifting him off the floor. "Perhaps you'd prefer to wait outside," Kullel suggested, his eyes flashing red. When Theoden finally broke free of Saruman's control, years seemed to fall away from him. His back straightened, his eyes cleared, and vitality returned to his face. His first act as a freed king was to banish Grima. Kullel released the spy, who scuttled backward before fleeing the hall. From the doorway, Grima's eyes fixed on Kullel with particular hatred. "Your companion," Grima hissed to Gandalf. "Saruman knows what he is, the fallen star child. Tell him the White Wizard has seen his home world burn. Tell him Saruman knows the name of Krypton." Before Kullel could react, Grima was gone, riding hard for Isengard. Later, when the king withdrew to mourn his son Theodred, recently killed in battle, Gandalf pulled Kullel aside. "What did Grima mean?" Kullel demanded. "How could Saruman know about Krypton?" "The Palantiri, the Seeing Stones, show many things," Gandalf replied. "Saruman has one. He may have glimpsed your arrival in Middle-earth years ago, or perhaps seen visions of your world through the stone." "Then I need to speak with him," Kullel decided. "He may know more about where I came from, why I'm here." "Careful, Kullel." Gandalf's eyes narrowed. "Saruman would use such knowledge to manipulate you. He serves Sauron now, whether he admits it to himself or not." Before they could discuss further, a messenger arrived with dire news: wild men were raiding the Westfold, burning villages and slaughtering civilians. Theoden's decision came swiftly: the people of Edoras would evacuate to the ancient fortress of Helm's Deep. The journey to Helm's Deep proved more dangerous than anticipated. Warg riders attacked the column of refugees, targeting the women and children at the rear. Kullel flew above the caravan when he spotted the approaching wolves and their orc masters cresting a nearby hill. "Wargs!" he shouted, diving toward the attackers. The battle erupted across the rolling plains. Kullel targeted the largest wargs first, using his strength and speed to tear through the enemy ranks. From above, he spotted Aragorn being dragged over a cliff edge by a dying warg. He flew to the precipice, but the ranger had already disappeared into the rapids below. "Aragorn!" Kullel called, scanning the churning waters with his enhanced vision. "Leave the dead," Theoden commanded, riding up behind him. "The wolves of Isengard will return. We must reach Helm's Deep before nightfall." Kullel ignored him, diving into the canyon to search the riverbanks. After an hour of methodical scanning, he found Aragorn washed up on a rocky shore, barely conscious. He carried the wounded ranger to Helm's Deep, arriving after the main column. The ancient fortress was built into the side of a mountain, a massive wall protecting a deep canyon where thousands of refugees now huddled. Gimli nearly wept with relief at seeing Aragorn alive, while Legolas greeted him with typical elven understatement: "You look terrible." That night, as Aragorn recovered, Kullel stood atop the deeping wall, gazing across the plains toward Isengard. With his enhanced vision, he could just make out distant movements, vast armies gathering. A presence beside him made him turn. A woman with long golden hair approached, Eowyn, sister-daughter to the king, who had led the evacuation to Helm's Deep. "They say you can fly," she said without preamble. "That your eyes can burn like dragon fire. That you came from the stars themselves." Kullel smiled faintly. "People say many things. Are they true?" In answer, he levitated a few feet off the stone walkway. Eowyn's eyes widened, but to her credit, she didn't step back. "I've lived in a cage all my life," she said after a moment. "A gilded one, perhaps, but a cage nonetheless. To fly as you do, I can't imagine such freedom." "It has its costs," Kullel replied, settling back onto the walkway. "I don't belong anywhere. Not truly. Neither do I." Eowyn's voice dropped. "Too royal to be common, too common to be respected, too female to be a warrior." She gazed across the plains. "At least you can leave when you choose." "Where would I go?" Kullel asked. This is the only home I've known, even if it isn't truly mine. Eowyn studied his face. You're not what I expected. The stories make you sound like a god, but you speak like a man. I'm neither. Or perhaps both. He shrugged. I'm still figuring that out. Before they could continue, a horn sounded from the valley below. Not an orc horn, an elven one. Cullel and Eowyn hurried down to the gate, where a company of elven warriors from Lothlorien marched into the fortress, led by Halder. We come to honor the alliance of old between men and elves, Halder declared to King Theoden. The reinforcements bolstered morale, but even with elven archers, their numbers remained painfully small compared to the host Saruman was sending. As the defenders prepared for battle, Aragorn found Cullel atop the wall again. We could use you on the wall when they come, Aragorn suggested. I was thinking of meeting them on the field, Cullel replied. I could thin their numbers before they reach the fortress. And make yourself a prime target for whatever devilry Saruman has planned. Aragorn shook his head. Grima's words to you weren't accidental. Saruman knows of you, perhaps has been watching you for years. He'll have prepared something to counter your abilities. You think he could actually hurt me? The Balrog did, Aragorn reminded him. And Saruman is crafty. He's had time to study what affected you in Moria. Reluctantly, Cullel agreed to Aragorn's strategy. That night, as a storm gathered over the Hornburg, 10,000 Uruk-hai marched from Isengard, their torches stretching into the distance like a river of fire. When the battle began, it quickly became clear that these weren't ordinary orcs. The Uruk-hai fought with discipline and terrible purpose, focusing their assault on the Deeping Wall's vulnerable drain. When their initial attacks failed to breach it, they brought forward black spheres that Cullel recognized as some form of explosive. Get back, he shouted to the nearby defenders, taking flight. Too late, the charges detonated, blasting a hole in the ancient stonework. Cullel flew through the dust and debris, intercepting Uruks pouring through the breach. He became a one-man choke point, using his body as a living wall, hurling attackers back or dispatching them with devastating efficiency. But for every Uruk he stopped, dozens more pressed forward. And now they targeted him specifically, firing strange green glowing arrows that hummed through the air. Most shattered harmlessly against his skin, but one grazed his shoulder, leaving a burning cut that didn't immediately heal. Aragorn was right, Cullel muttered, examining the wound. Saruman's been preparing for me. The battle deteriorated as rain poured down. Elves and men fell to overwhelming numbers. Cullel alternated between defending the breach and flying to other hotspots along the wall, but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. When the order came to fall back to the keep, Cullel covered the retreat, holding the courtyard alone against hundreds of Uruks. Their weapons still mostly bounced off him, but the green-tipped arrows and blades could cut him, each wound healing slower than normal. Inside the keep, the defenders barricaded the doors with tables and benches. King Theoden's hope had failed, his eyes hollow as he watched his people prepare for the end. The fortress is taken, he said flatly. It is over. You said this fortress would never fall while your men defend it, Aragorn reminded him fiercely. They still defend it. They have died defending it. A renewed assault battered the main doors. Cullel pressed his back against them, using his strength to counter the battering ram's impact. Is there another way for the women and children to get out of the caves? Aragorn asked. There is a path, Theoden admitted. It leads into the mountains. But they will not get far, the Uruk-hai are too many. Not if we hold them here, Cullel grunted, the doors shuddering behind him. Aragorn's eyes lit with renewed determination. Ride out with me. For death and glory. For Rohan, Theoden responded, his spirit returning. For your people. The sun is rising, Gimli observed from a high window. Gandalf's promise echoed in their memories, look to my coming at first light on the 5th day. At dawn, look to the east. They mounted horses in the hall, all except Cullel, who needed no mount. When the doors finally shattered, Theoden led the charge, riders bursting from the keep with swords drawn. Kullel flew above them, clearing a path with sweeps of heat vision. They fought their way to the causeway, driving Uruks before them, when a blinding white light appeared on the eastern ridge. Gandalf had returned, and with him, 2,000 riders led by Eomer, the remainder of Rohan's army. The reinforcements charged down the steep slope, the rising sun at their backs blinding the Uruk-hai. The tide turned swiftly, the surviving defenders of Helm's Deep fighting with renewed vigor while the fresh cavalry smashed into the enemy's flank. As the Uruk-hai broke and fled toward the forest, Kullel noticed something strange: trees where no trees had stood the day before. When the fleeing Uruks entered the woods, the trees themselves attacked, branches seizing orcs and disappearing with them into the shadowy depths. The Ents have gone to war, Gandalf explained later, as they surveyed the battlefield. Saruman's treachery has awakened forces he cannot comprehend. With the battle won, they rode for Isengard itself. Kullel flew ahead, eager to confront Saruman and learn what the wizard knew about Krypton. What he found was unexpected: Isengard flooded, its machines of war destroyed, its fires quenched. Giant Ents moved among the ruins, tearing down what remained of Saruman's works. And sitting atop a broken wall, enjoying pipeweed and provisions, were Merry and Pippin. "Welcome, my lords, to Isengard," Merry called cheerfully as the riders approached. The hobbits explained how the Ents had attacked Isengard, breaking the dam to flood its underground forges and factories. Saruman himself remained trapped in his tower, Orthanc, an obsidian spire that even the Ents could not break. "We need to speak with him," Gandalf said. "To learn what he knows of Sauron's plans." They gathered at the base of Orthanc. Saruman eventually appeared on a high balcony, his once white robes now multicolored, his voice honey-sweet as he tried to sway Theoden with false apologies. Kullel searched the wizard's face, looking for any sign that he truly knew about Krypton. Their eyes met briefly, and Saruman's persuasive tone faltered. "Ah, the Star Child," he said, his focus shifting. "How fascinating you've proven to be. Not of Arda at all, are you? I've seen your world, Kal-El of Krypton. I watched it die." The use of his full name, a name he himself had only recently remembered, sent a chill through Kullel. "What do you know of Krypton?" he demanded. "A doomed world circling a red sun. Advanced beyond anything in Middle-earth, yet blind to its own destruction." Saruman's smile turned cruel. "The Palantir showed me its final moments, quite spectacular. The core destabilized, if I understood correctly. Very poor planning by your people." Kullel shot upward, hovering at eye level with the wizard. "If you're trying to provoke me, you're succeeding. Merely sharing knowledge, as one scholar to another." Saruman's eyes narrowed. "Though I could share more. About why you have these abilities under our yellow sun. About the message your father embedded in your craft. About your true purpose here." "Don't listen to him," Gandalf called. "He seeks to manipulate you with half-truths and lies." Saruman laughed. "Always so quick to dismiss what you don't understand, Gandalf. The boy deserves to know his heritage. After all, he's the last. When he dies, all knowledge of Krypton dies with him." Kullel hovered closer. "Tell me what you know." "Come inside, then." Saruman gestured to an open window. "We can speak privately." "Kullel, no." Aragorn shouted. "It's a trap." But Kullel had already made his decision. He flew through the window into Orthanc's uppermost chamber, where strange devices and artifacts lined the walls. Saruman followed him inside, closing the door. "You've been trying to understand your powers," Saruman began, moving to a table covered with parchments. "Why you're stronger here than your people were on Krypton. Why you can fly, why your eyes emit heat. How do you know all this?" Kullel demanded. "The Palantir shows many things to those with the will to direct it." Saruman lifted a cloth, revealing a perfectly round black stone. "I saw your arrival years ago, a burning light falling from the sky into Elrond's valley. Most interesting. So I watched you grow, studied what I observed. Kal-El stared at the seeing stone, uncomfortable with the idea that Saruman had been spying on him for years. Your people evolved under a red sun, Saruman continued. Its particular radiation shaped your biology. Our yellow sun's different radiation empowers your cells in ways your people never experienced on Krypton. He smiled thinly. Quite fascinating, really. I've developed several theories about how it works. Is that why you created those green-tipped weapons? Kal-El asked. You've been studying how to hurt me? Merely a precaution. The material came from a meteorite that fell near Fangorn, from the same region of space as your pod, I believe. Something from your home system, perhaps. Saruman picked up a glowing green crystal. It disrupts the energy your cells absorb from our sun. Kal-El immediately felt weak, a sensation similar to what he'd experienced in Moria but more intense. He stepped back involuntarily. Ah, you feel it. Saruman placed the crystal back on the table. Imagine my surprise when I discovered a substance that affects you so specifically. Almost as if it were designed for the purpose. What do you want from me? Kal-El asked, recovering as distance from the crystal restored his strength. An alliance. Saruman spread his hands. Sauron's victory is inevitable. But in the world he creates, there could be a place for special individuals. With your strength and my knowledge, we could preserve something of value, perhaps even recreate aspects of Kryptonian civilization. Using his slaves. Under his eye. Kal-El shook his head. That's not preservation, it's perversion. Then perhaps a different approach. Saruman's voice lowered confidentially. Your father left a message in your craft, a repository of Kryptonian knowledge. I've glimpsed it in the Palantir but cannot access it directly. Together, we could. Kal-El's patience ended. He moved with super speed, seizing the wizard by his robes. You've been watching me my entire life, creating weapons specifically to harm me, and now you expect me to trust you. Where is this message from my father? In the craft, Saruman choked out, genuine fear in his eyes. A crystal, embedded in the control panel. Kal-El released him roughly. If you're lying, why would I lie about this? What purpose would it serve? Saruman straightened his robes indignantly. Check for yourself. The knowledge of Krypton could elevate all of Middle-earth. We need not be enemies, Kal-El. A shout from outside interrupted them. Kal-El. Come quickly. He flew back through the window to find chaos below. Pippin had seized the Palantir that Grima had thrown from the tower, and now lay unconscious while Gandalf tended to him. What happened? Kal-El asked, landing beside Aragorn. The fool of a Took looked into the seeing stone, Gimli growled. Saw something that frightened him senseless. Gandalf wrapped the Palantir in his cloak after reviving Pippin. The young hobbit reported fearfully that he had seen the eye of Sauron himself, who had questioned him about the ring. Worse, Sauron now believed Pippin had the ring, and that he was being held prisoner in Orthanc. We must ride for Minas Tirith immediately, Gandalf decided. Sauron will strike soon. As they prepared to depart, Kal-El approached the wizard privately. Saruman claims my father left a message in my craft, a repository of Kryptonian knowledge. Gandalf's bushy eyebrows rose. Did he now? And did he happen to mention how he came by this information? Through the Palantir. Gandalf stroked his beard. It's possible he speaks truly. The Palantiri were made to see across vast distances, perhaps even between worlds. But be wary, Kal-El. Even truth can be weaponized by one such as Saruman. If there is a message from my father, I need to find it, Kal-El insisted. After all these years. And so you shall, when the time is right. But first, we have a war to win. Gandalf's eyes softened slightly. Your past is important, Kal-El, but not more important than the future of all free peoples. They departed Isengard, leaving Saruman imprisoned in his tower. Gandalf took Pippin with him, riding hard for Minas Tirith on Shadowfax. The others returned to Edoras to muster Rohan's full strength for the coming war. Before they left, Cullel flew back to Orthanc one last time, hovering outside Saruman's window. "I'll be back for the rest of what you know," he promised the wizard. Saruman smiled thinly. "I'll be waiting, son of Krypton. With such interesting things to show you." In Edoras, King Theoden held a feast celebrating their victory at Helm's Deep. Despite the merriment, an undercurrent of tension ran through the hall. Everyone knew larger battles lay ahead. Cullel noticed Eowyn watching Aragorn when she thought no one was looking, her feelings for the ranger evident in her eyes. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, she found Cullel on the terrace outside the Golden Hall. "You're leaving soon," she said. "Not a question." "Gandalf will need help in Minas Tirith," he confirmed. "I can get there faster than anyone." "Take me with you," she said abruptly. "I can fight. I've trained with sword and shield since childhood." Cullel studied her face, the determination there, the need to prove herself. "Why ask me and not Aragorn?" A faint blush colored her cheeks. "He would refuse out of desire to protect me. You understand what it means to be different, to have abilities others would keep you from using." "It's not my decision to make," he said gently. My uncle sees me as a child to be protected, not a shield maiden of Rohan." Her hands clenched at her sides. "I will find my way to this war with or without help. But with your help, I might arrive in time to make a difference." Before Cullel could respond, a red glow appeared on the horizon, a beacon fire burning on a distant mountain peak. "Gondor calls for aid," Aragorn announced, rushing into the hall to inform Theoden. After a tense moment, the king made his decision, "And Rohan will answer. Muster the Rohirrim." In the preparations that followed, Cullel lost track of Eowyn. Riders spread across Rohan, summoning fighting men to Dunharrow, where the army would gather before marching to Gondor's aid. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli prepared to ride with them. "I should fly ahead," Cullel told them. "Minas Tirith may already be under attack." Aragorn nodded. "Go. We'll come as swiftly as we can." "But Cullel," he hesitated. "Remember what Gandalf said. Sauron's forces will be prepared for you now. They've seen what you can do." "I'll be careful," Cullel promised. That night, strange dreams visited him again, Krypton's destruction, but now with fragments of his father's voice. Instructions, warnings, something about a phantom zone and escaped prisoners. He woke unsettled, wondering how much of what Saruman had told him was truth and how much manipulation. At dawn, he bid farewell to his companions and took to the sky, flying eastward toward Gondor. As he crossed the border into Anorion, he saw them, vast armies marching from Mordor. Thousands upon thousands of orcs, trolls, Easterlings, and Haradrim, all converging on the white city of Minas Tirith. And among them, moving like dark shadows above the marching host, winged creatures larger than eagles, ridden by black-robed figures, the Nazgul, mounted on fell beasts. Cullel accelerated, breaking the sound barrier as he raced toward the city. He arrived to find its outer defenses already engaged with Mordor's vanguard. Siege towers approached the walls while catapults launched projectiles from both sides. He dove straight for the largest concentration of enemies, smashing through a siege tower like it was made of kindling. Orcs scattered in terror as he landed among them, eyes blazing red. "The Star Demon," one screamed. "Flee!" But these orcs were better disciplined than most. After the initial shock, they rallied, surrounding him with weapons raised. Cullel noticed many carried the same green-tipped spears and arrows he'd seen at Helm's Deep. Saruman had clearly shared his research with Sauron. He fought cautiously, aware of the kryptonite-infused weapons. Even so, he cut a swath through the enemy forces, destroying siege equipment and disrupting formations. The defenders on the walls cheered as he flew along their perimeter, using heat vision to ignite approaching siege towers. A piercing shriek split the air as a Nazgul dove toward him, its fell beast's claws extended. Kal-El met the creature head-on, grabbing its neck before it could strike. The beast thrashed violently, nearly throwing its black-robed rider. The Nazgul drew a pale sword that gleamed with unnatural light. When it struck Kal-El's arm, he felt an intense cold spreading from the wound, a numbing darkness that reminded him of Frodo's Morgul blade injury. He released the fell beast, dropping through the air to escape a second strike. The wound burned with magical cold, healing far slower than normal. Whatever power infused the Nazgul's weapons, it affected him similarly to the kryptonite, though through different means. Retreating temporarily, Kal-El landed atop the city's highest level, where he found Gandalf organizing the defense. The White Wizard looked exhausted but determined. "Kal-El," he greeted. "Your arrival brings hope to the men. But use caution, the Witch King leads Sauron's forces, and he wields sorcery from the dark days of Angmar." "I felt it," Kal-El confirmed, showing his still healing arm. "His blade carries a cold power that affects me. The Witch King was once a great sorcerer among men before Sauron corrupted him with a ring of power. His magic draws from the void between stars, perhaps that's why it harms you particularly." Gandalf's eyes narrowed. "Stay away from him if you can." The battle intensified as night fell. Grond, a massive battering ram shaped like a wolf's head, approached the main gate, pushed by mountain trolls and guarded by the Witch King himself. Kal-El and Gandalf moved to defend the gate together. "You cannot enter here," Gandalf declared, blocking the Witch King's path. The Nazgul Lord laughed, a chilling sound that made nearby men cover their ears in pain. "Old fool! Do you not know death when you see it? My hour has come." He drew his sword, which erupted into pale flame. As he raised it to strike Gandalf, Kal-El intervened, flying between them and blocking the blow with his forearm. The blade didn't shatter as most weapons did against his skin. Instead, it cut deeply, cold fire spreading up his arm. The Witch King hissed in what sounded like satisfaction. "The Star Child," he said, his unseen face turning toward Kal-El within his dark hood. "My master has waited long to test your limits." Kal-El fought through the pain, striking back with his good arm. The blow sent the Witch King sliding backwards several yards, but didn't topple him as it would have most enemies. "Your power fades in my presence, creature of another world," the Nazgul Lord taunted. "The darkness between stars is my domain now." Before they could continue their confrontation, horns sounded from the north. The Rohirrim had arrived. 6,000 riders charged across the Pelennor fields, smashing into the rear of Mordor's forces. The Witch King turned away from the gate, mounting his fell beast to counter this new threat. Kal-El would have followed, but Gandalf caught his arm. "Help secure the city," the wizard directed. "I fear treachery within as much as assault from without. Find Lord Denethor. I've had no word from him since I arrived." Kal-El nodded, flying up to the citadel at the city's summit. There he found chaos. Guards argued among themselves while servants ran in confusion. No sign of the Steward of Gondor. "Where is Lord Denethor?" he asked a guard. "The tombs," the man answered fearfully. "He takes his son there, says he would rather burn than surrender." Alarmed, Kal-El raced to the silent street where the tombs of Gondor's rulers lay. Inside the House of Stewards, he found a macabre scene, a pyre built, oil spread liberally, and upon it, Denethor lying beside his unconscious son Faramir. "Stop!" Kal-El shouted as the steward raised a torch. "Who dares interrupt the Steward of Gondor?" Denethor demanded, his eyes wild with grief and madness. "This is my choice, to die as I have lived, by my own will." "Your son lives," Kal-El responded, approaching slowly. "Would you burn him alive?" "Better a swift death than what comes for us all," Denethor snarled. "I have seen it in the Palantir, Gondor falling, darkness covering all lands. There is no hope. The Palantir shows many things, not all true, not all certain." Kal-El took another step forward. Put down the torch. Instead, Denethor dropped it onto the oil-soaked wood. Flames erupted instantly, spreading across the pyre. Kal-El moved with super speed, snatching Faramir from the flames and carrying him to safety before the fire could harm him. When he returned seconds later, Denethor was already engulfed, running wildly through the tombs like a human torch. There was nothing Kal-El could do but watch as the steward of Gondor threw himself from the summit of Minas Tirith, falling like a shooting star to his death far below. Kal-El brought Faramir to the houses of healing, where the wounded from the battle were being treated. Outside, the tide had turned with the arrival of the Rohirrim, though fighting continued across the Pelennor fields. From a high window, he spotted the Witch King engaging with a lone Rohirric warrior who had cornered him on foot. Zooming in with his enhanced vision, Kal-El recognized Eowyn, disguised in the armor of a rider of Rohan, standing over King Theoden's fallen form. He launched himself through the window, flying at top speed toward the confrontation, but even he wasn't fast enough to prevent what happened next. The Witch King's mace shattered Eowyn's shield and broke her arm. As the Nazgul Lord reached for her, preparing to deliver a killing blow, a small figure darted forward, Merry, who had apparently ridden to battle secretly as well. The hobbit stabbed the Witch King behind the knee with his barrow blade, a weapon specifically enchanted against the undead lord. The Nazgul screamed in pain, momentarily vulnerable. Eowyn rose to her feet, summoning her last strength, and drove her sword into the empty space within the Witch King's hood. An unearthly shriek rent the air as the Lord of the Nazgul crumbled into empty robes and armor. By the time Kal-El reached them, it was over, the prophecy fulfilled that no man could kill the Witch King of Angmar. Eowyn collapsed beside her uncle's body, her life force fading from the Nazgul's black breath. Kal-El carried both her and Merry to the houses of healing, where Aragorn later used his healing knowledge and Kingsfoil to call them back from the Shadow Realm. The battle for Minas Tirith was won, but at terrible cost. The Pelennor fields lay strewn with the dead, men of Gondor and Rohan, alongside countless enemies. King Theoden was among the fallen, his body prepared for return to Rohan for burial. In the aftermath, the remaining captains gathered to plan their next move. Despite their victory, Mordor's strength remained largely intact. The recovered Palantir showed Sauron rebuilding his forces, preparing an even larger assault. Frodo has passed beyond my sight, Gandalf admitted to the council. The darkness is deepening. If Sauron had the ring, we would know it, Aragorn argued. It's only a matter of time, Gandalf countered. He has suffered a defeat, yes, but behind the walls of Mordor, our enemy is regrouping. Let him stay there, Gimli suggested, puffing on his pipe. Let him rot. Why should we care? Because 10,000 orcs now stand between Frodo and Mount Doom, Gandalf explained. I've sent him to his death. Kal-El, who had been silently listening, finally spoke. I could fly to Mount Doom. Find Frodo and Sam, help them reach the crater. And risk the ring's pull on you. Aragorn shook his head. We've discussed this before. The closer you came to Mount Doom, the stronger its influence would grow. Then what do you suggest? Kal-El asked. Aragorn's eyes gleamed with determination. Draw out Sauron's armies. Empty his lands. Give Frodo a chance to reach Mount Doom. How? Eomer questioned. We gather our full strength and march on the Black Gate. Aragorn looked around the room. Challenge him directly. We cannot achieve victory through strength of arms, Eomer protested. Not for ourselves, Aragorn agreed. But we can give Frodo his chance if we keep Sauron's eye fixed upon us. The plan was made, the combined forces of Gondor and Rohan would march to the Black Gate, deliberately provoking Sauron into committing his remaining forces. It was a desperate gambit, likely suicidal, but it offered Frodo the only chance he might get. Before they departed, Kal-El visited Eowyn in the houses of healing. She sat by a window overlooking the city, her arm in a sling, her face pale but resolute. You're going with them, she said when he entered. To the Black Gate. Yes. He sat across from her. I wish you could join us. She smiled faintly. As do I, though perhaps with less enthusiasm than before. Her expression sobered. I thought I sought glory in battle, but now I understand I was seeking death instead. An end to the cage. And now? Now I see there are other ways to find freedom. She looked out the window. Other types of courage beyond the battlefield. I'm glad you found that before it was too late, Kal-El said sincerely. What about you? She asked. What will you do if we survive this war? The question caught him off guard. He had been so focused on the immediate fight that he'd given little thought to what might come after. I don't know, he admitted. Find my father's message, if Saruman told the truth about it. Learn more about where I came from. And then. He stared at his hands. I suppose I'll have to decide where I truly belong. The army that marched from Minas Tirith was small by the standards of great wars, perhaps 7,000 men all told, a fraction of Mordor's might. Kal-El flew above them, scouting the path ahead and watching for ambushes. Their route took them through Ithilien and past the crossroads where an ancient fallen statue had been restored, the crown had returned to its rightful place. Aragorn took it as a good omen, though few others found comfort in such signs. As they approached Mordor, Kal-El noticed something strange, a darkness spreading across the sky, blocking the sun. Not natural clouds but a deliberate shadow cast by Sauron's power, denying them light and hope. Under this shadow they came at last to the Moran Nan, the Black Gate of Mordor. Massive iron doors set between two stone watchtowers, surrounded by desolation. The army arrayed itself upon a hill of slag and broken stone, banners unfurled in a breeze that carried the stench of decay. Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, and Kal-El rode forward with a small honor guard to call out their challenge. The Black Gate remained silent and unopened. Where are they? Pippin asked nervously. As if in answer, a lone rider emerged from a small door beside the main gate, the mouth of Sauron, Lieutenant of the Dark Tower. His face was mostly hidden beneath a grotesque helmet, but his mouth was visible, lips cracked and bleeding. My master Sauron the Great bids you welcome, he announced in a mocking tone. Then his hidden gaze fell upon Kal-El. Ah, the Star Child has come as well. My master has special interest in you, last son of Krypton. How does Sauron know that name? Kal-El demanded. The mouth smiled, revealing blackened teeth. The Great Eye sees much. He has watched your kind before, travelers between worlds. He knows more of your origins than you yourself remember. He reached into a satchel and withdrew a small item. Perhaps you recognize this? He held up a crystal, emerald green and glowing faintly. Similar to what Saruman had shown him, but slightly different in form. A piece of your homeworld, the mouth explained. One of several that fell to Middle-earth when the dimensional barriers thinned during your arrival. My master has collected them all save the one Saruman found. His hideous smile widened. They're quite effective at neutralizing your abilities, are they not? Kal-El felt the familiar weakness even at this distance, a draining sensation that sapped his strength. The crystal was definitely kryptonite, somehow transported to Middle-earth alongside his pod. Enough of this, Gandalf interrupted. What terms does your master offer? The rabble of Gondor and its deluded allies will withdraw immediately from the lands east of the Anduin, never to contest them again, the mouth recited. Gondor will acknowledge Sauron as overlord of all Middle-earth. He paused dramatically. And the alien calling himself Kal-El will surrender to Mordor for study. And in return? Aragorn asked coldly. You will not be slaughtered outright. The mouth sneered. Those are generous terms, considering your hopeless position. I don't bargain with servants, Aragorn replied, drawing Andúril. Tell your master this, the armies of the West will not withdraw. We have come to bring down his empire once and for all. The mouth's composure cracked. Impudent fool. Do you truly believe, his words cut off as Aragorn swung Andúril in a lightning-fast arc, severing the emissary's head from his shoulders. "I guess that concludes negotiations," Gimli muttered. As the headless body tumbled from its saddle, the black gate began to creak open. Beyond it, Cullell's enhanced vision detected thousands upon thousands of orcs, Mordor's remaining strength, emptying as Aragorn had hoped. They retreated to their army as drums began to beat within Mordor. The forces of Sauron poured through the gate, quickly surrounding the hill where the men of the west stood. Outnumbered at least 10 to 1, they formed a defensive ring. Aragorn rode before the lines, his voice carrying to every soldier. "Sons of Gondor, of Rohan, my brothers. I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. This day we fight." With the speech concluded, he turned to Cullell. "Fly high when the battle begins. Strike where you can, but be wary of those green crystals. Sauron clearly plans to use them against you." Cullell nodded grimly. "Be careful, Aragorn. We still need a king when this is over." The first wave of orcs broke against their lines like a dark tide. Cullell took to the air, using his heat vision to blast gaps in the enemy formations, then diving to engage directly where the fighting was thickest. Almost immediately, he discovered Sauron's strategy. Orcs carrying kryptonite shards were distributed throughout the enemy army, creating zones where Cullell's strength diminished. He adapted quickly, attacking from a distance or striking fast before withdrawing from the radiation's effects. The men fought valiantly, but they were simply too few. Slowly, the circle contracted as they were pushed back toward the center of the hill. Cullell spotted Aragorn fighting side by side with Legolas and Gimli, while Gandalf used his staff and sword with equal effectiveness against the pressing horde. Then, high above the battlefield, came the piercing cries of the remaining Nazgul. Without their Witch King, they seemed less coordinated but no less deadly. Their fell beasts dove toward the beleaguered defenders, claws extended. Cullell intercepted them mid-air, his ability to fly giving him a crucial advantage. He battled them above the chaos below, weaving between their attacks, striking when possible. Though their blades still caused him pain, without the Witch King's particular power, the wounds healed more quickly. As he grappled with one fell beast, Cullell noticed something in the distance, great eagles approaching from the west, led by Gwaihir the Windlord. They joined the aerial battle, taking on the Nazgul with powerful beaks and talons. "The eagles are coming," Pippin's voice carried from below. With the eagles engaging the Nazgul, Cullell returned his attention to the ground battle. The situation had deteriorated further, the men now fought back-to-back in isolated groups, surrounded by overwhelming numbers. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the earth. The Tower of Barad-dûr, visible in the distance beyond the Black Gate, shuddered visibly. A moment of silence fell across the battlefield as all eyes turned toward Mordor's heart. "Frodo," Gandalf whispered. "He's done it." The great eye atop Barad-dûr flared with impossible brightness, then contracted in upon itself. The tower began to collapse, stone by massive stone. Across the battlefield, orcs dropped their weapons, wailing in confusion and terror as their masters withdrew from their mines. Mount Doom erupted in the distance, a column of fire and ash rising into the dark sky. Cracks spread across the plain of Gorgoroth as the foundations of Mordor literally began to break apart. "Frodo and Sam," Gandalf said urgently. "They're still on the mountain." Without hesitation, Cullell shot skyward, flying faster than he ever had before. He streaked past the collapsing tower, over the disintegrating plain, toward the erupting volcano. The heat was intense, but he pushed through it, scanning the mountain slopes for any sign of the hobbits. He found them on a small island of rock amid flowing lava, Frodo unconscious in Sam's arms, both hobbits exhausted beyond measure. Sam looked up in wonder as Cullell descended toward them. "Well, if that isn't a sight," the gardener said weakly. "Come to join us at the end, Mr. Cullell." "Not the end, Sam," Cullell replied, gathering both hobbits carefully in his arms. Just the beginning of something new. He flew them to safety as Mount Doom continued its violent eruption, destroying the last remnants of Sauron's power. The darkness over the land began to break apart, allowing shafts of sunlight to pierce through, the first natural light Mordor had seen in an age. Cullel returned the hobbits to the field of battle, where the remaining orcs had fled or been slain. Gandalf wept openly at seeing Frodo alive, while Aragorn knelt before the ring-bearer in respect. "It's done," Frodo said simply, his voice hoarse from the mountain's fumes. "It's over." But Cullel, with his enhanced hearing, caught Gandalf's whispered reply, "No, dear Frodo. The greatest journeys always come full circle. This is not an end, but a renewal." As they made their way back to Minas Tirith, Cullel flew above the company, feeling strangely light. Sauron was defeated, Middle-earth saved. Yet questions about his own place in this world, or any world, remained unanswered. The mouth of Sauron had claimed the Dark Lord knew about travelers between worlds. What did that mean? Were there others like him? And the kryptonite, how had it come to Middle-earth alongside his pod? Saruman had hinted at a message from his father embedded in his craft. If true, perhaps those answers awaited him back in Rivendell. For now, though, he would join in Middle-earth's celebration. The war was won, and for the first time since learning of his origins, Cullel felt something like peace. Whatever came next, he would face it not as an alien outsider, but as someone who had fought for this world, and perhaps, in some small way, earned his place in it. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.